She's had compassion and a level of gentleness and care for the students that's really unmatched. The volunteer outpatients, I don't know if you know, but Anna mentioned a little bit, they generously contribute their time to helping students take their first steps in the interview. And it's really quite extraordinary. What Ruth and her peers are contributing in this way, and I think that it's wonderful that we have Ruth here, and I think Ruth in many ways is speaking for the many other patients across the institution who donate their time in the volunteer outpatient program, but also, you know, when you come to Hopkins and you're an inpatient or an outpatient, very frequently you're asked, do you have a few minutes to spend with a student? And so many patients say yes, regardless of how they happen to be feeling that day. And what Ruth and her colleagues are doing, I think, are beginning to change the nature of the relationship between doctors and patients so that it's really truly a bi-directional kind of relationship, which is a really wonderful thing. So what we've asked Ruth to do is to share a bit of her experience as a volunteer outpatient, and it's my great pleasure to welcome her today.
I just want to say, remember this, they are second-year students. She's just been here only 2 years, Anna, right? That's just what we see as volunteer patients. Anyway, good evening, team. We're all part of the Johns Hopkins team. We are anatomical donors, volunteer patients, doctor preceptors, and program administrators and facilitators. Year after year, this team graduates wonderfully ethnically diverse medical students. They're from everywhere, destined to become the world's best doctors. I am proud to be a part of what makes this happen. I have watched it happen. I have felt it happen. I know that all volunteer patients share my exuberance. We are a group that includes a female pilot, lawyers, businessmen, a Corvette-owning race car fan, and a retired CIA officer. My husband Charlie and I frequently expressed our gratitude that soon after we began seeing our internist, Dr. Sarah Clever, she suggested that we become volunteer patients. Charlie soon moved on to other teaching programs at Johns Hopkins. For me, over the past 8 years, from August to December, I have played the role of a patient who has come to see my doctor for help. So far, I have complained about my aches and pains 100 times to about 1,000 student doctors. Routinely, my doctor is one of the 120 annual first-year students who's just arrived on campus, fresh from the college bookworm stage, still blushing, sometimes stammering. The doctor student opens the door to invite me into a room where 5 or 6 fellow students and their preceptor, who will follow them for their full 4 years, observe and critique the next 8 minutes of doctor-patient dialogue and note-taking. During one of my first visits as a volunteer patient, the student doctor was a bright-eyed young woman, so shy that she could only stare. She motioned me to a chair, pulled up her stool in front of me, then she turned red, wiped at her forehead, and briefly, I thought, threatened to cry. I saw and felt her fear. She literally gulped. And then, this is a true story, and then the angel, the name ascribed to a peer typically assigned to assist the interviewing student if needed, touched her shoulder and she began to ask me questions. As her sense of caring took over, she visibly showed me strength and confidence. She listened, she forgot her shyness, she searched for information about my pain, and remarkably, I in turn gained confidence in her. At the end of the 8 minutes, the preceptor asked for my feedback. The young woman blanched as she likely recalled her initial hesitancy. Then I described how this physician-to-be had affected me. I told them how instinctively I began to trust her when I realized how closely she listened and how much she wanted to make me well and how much she wanted me to be pain-free. As I spoke, the young doctor breathed hugely with relief, her peers smiled, the preceptor beamed, and a world's best doctor was on her way. This is the transformation the Johns Hopkins team works on every day with every medical student. Another example of our students' empathy has touched me deeply since I began volunteering. In session after session, when questioned about my family, I responded to the student doctors that my sister Barbara had died young, a never-ending sadness for me. Invariably, the students expressed their deep caring. Frequently, they touched my arm, they touched my hand. They wanted me to know they felt my loss. More than once, trying to get through that patch of history, I cried softly as the student doctor handed me a tissue. They could not fake this. Their empathy was tangible. We built a trust. I wanted them to be my doctor. Quickly, please allow me this. I want to share a story about the specialness of our doctor preceptors. These men and women have their own practices, yet they take on an entire second profession with their young protégés. They are the core and value of the Johns Hopkins Medical School and those who attend here. I personally owe one of them, Dr. Michael Malia, my son's recovery. Due to his willingness to very, very quickly connect us to his peer in the infectious disease department, my son survived a life-threatening situation following his cancer. You cannot replicate this ready humanity that is Johns Hopkins. This team has made me believe, to understand that empathy can be tangible, that the empathy taught at Johns Hopkins is tangible. I am so proud to be a part of this team that I even go with pride when I read of an accomplishment by someone from the Hopkins medical family whose name I don't even know. What I do know is that one day, some of those students' names will be my students. I am not at all surprised that our medical students thought of this lovely garden, and that the Hopkins team behind them not only agreed, but supported the building and dedication of this beautiful space in honor of the various volunteers. This garden, my friends, reflects every aspect of Johns Hopkins Medical School living, tangible empathy. Okay.